Hi there, this is Anna from Anna Aspnes Designs. I've got a quick tutorial for you today. I'm going to show you how to create a digital scrapbooking layout or a digital artistry layout using the new UrbanThreadz FotoBlendz Frames by Anna Aspnes Designs. So you can see on my screen this is the layout that I want to recreate using the ArtPlay Palette Fernweh collection. And then specifically, I want to focus on these UrbanThreadz FotoBlendz frames. You can see that you will get 4 of those in the collection, and they can be used in multiple ways. I have included lots of different layers in the PSD files so that you can use them to different effects. So you can see that they are actually delivered in 2 different folders. And if I click on one of those folders, you'll see that all of the layers are grouped together in a single folder. So this is just one frame here. And what I've done is I've provided the frame in both a PSD multi-layer format, and then I have provided the individual layers in PNG format for those users that are not working in Adobe Photoshop or Elements. So I'm going to focus on the PSD file today, but please know that all of the layers included in this PSD file are also individually saved as those PNG format files, which means they retain their opacity. So I'm going to go back to the 1A folder of this product, and I'm going to access the second file, which is in the number 2 folder. And you can see that we have a similar scenario here, a different format with the frames and the photo blends, and they too are also delivered in PSD and individual PNG file format. I'm going to bring that file into my Photoshop workspace by just dragging it in there. Note that you can also go to File, Open, and then go ahead and navigate to those same files. And then once you've accessed that file, you'll select it, and then you'll simply click Open. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. And I'm going to close down our original layout so that we can start building a recreation of this page. So I'm going to click No, and then I'm going to create a new file. So I'm going to go to File, New, and then I'm going to create a 12 by 12 inch file at 300 dpi. I have a custom preset for that, but notice when I click on that, the width will be 12 inches, the height will be 12 inches, and you want a 300 pixels per inch resolution. This ensures that you will have great print quality if you decide to print your pages. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create, and you'll see we have this new layout on our page. And this is like a blank canvas onto which we can build our foundation and build up the layers to create our digital artistry or scrapbooking page. I'm then going to go ahead and access the ArtPlay Palette Fernweh collection, and we're going to go and select a paper from ArtPlay Palette Fernweh. So you can see we have 2 different folders here as well as a image that I'm going to be using to create my page. So in the first folder we have the brush set, the elements, and the papery. And of course we have a choice of 4 different artsy papers, and I'm going to go ahead and select this one. And this time I'm going to drag this paper directly into my workspace and directly onto my canvas. And I can either double click that canvas, or I can click on this check mark at the top of my screen in order to place that paper. And you can see that that X now disappears, showing that that has been placed. And then you can also go to File, Open, and you can navigate that way if you wanted to as well. Once we have our foundation, it's a matter of switching over to the UrbanThreadz FotoBlendz Frames PSD file. And then you're going to select all of the layers. And you'll see in the Layers panel, when I select this PSD file, that we have a number of layers that are visible, and this is denoted by this small eye icon next to the layer. And then we also have a number of layers that are invisible. And this gives us the option to be able to toggle those layers on and off to create different frame scenarios. So I'm just simply going to move all of these layers onto my canvas by clicking on the first layer in the Layers panel, holding down the Shift button on my keyboard, and then clicking on the last layer in the Layers panel so that all of those layers are now selected. And then with the Move tool selected from the Tools panel, I'm simply going to drag all of those layers on top of my foundation. I'm going to place them as preferred. And you can see that this particular frame orientation works particularly well with that underlying artsy paper. I'm going to select that frame PSD file and now close it out, as we already have the layers on our canvas. So let's go ahead and look at what we've got here. Currently we have our background paper, we have a blended frame. I've blended some of these frames so it looks like they are being blended by this clipping mask area here. So we've got a couple of those. And then we also have shadows that go with those blended frames. You can see as I turn those on and off, that provides dimension and visual interest. We then have the FotoBlendz clipping mask, to which we can clip a photo, and this will immediately blend our image into the background artistry, and then a couple of other blended frames on the top here. So various layers in different orders. We've also got some layers that have been turned off here. So a full frame shadow. So these are frames that have not been blended and also include these full clipping masks. So you can see how I can turn those on and we'll be able to change the look of this frame. And then of course we have the UrbanThreadz at the top here. So this is the nice stitched feature that creates the focal point of the image. So let's go ahead and see how this looks with our image. This time I'm going to go to File, Open, and bring in our image this way. So you can see that the photo is brought into our workspace, and then with the Move tool selected from the Tools panel, I'm going to drag that image onto our canvas. And you can see that it was introduced into the Layers panel at the point at which I had my cursor selected. So if I had this layer selected, then the image would be brought directly on top of that. We want to move that image directly above the clipping mask layer so that we can blend our photo. And obviously you can see that the image is much too large for that underlying FotoBlendz clipping mask. If I go ahead and reduce the opacity, you'll be able to see that clipping mask area show through the image. And so we need to make that image smaller. To do this, you are going to move to the corner edge of the image. You're going to click on that bounding box. Now if you're working in Adobe Photoshop Elements, you want to click on that bounding box, and you're going to make sure that you have that Constrain Proportions box checked, which appears at the bottom of your screen when you have your Move tool selected. In Adobe Photoshop, you're going to want to hold down that Shift button on your keyboard in order to be able to drag in those corners and resize your image proportionately. And you want to make sure that the photo covers the area of the clipping mask. So when you think you've got it just about right, you can go ahead and double click, or go ahead and click that check mark that's at the top of your screen in Photoshop, or it will actually appear on the bounding box if you're working in Adobe Photoshop Elements. I'm going to go ahead and increase that opacity that I reduced earlier, and then you're going to go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, or use the shortcut Alt or Option, Control or Command plus G, and then this is going to clip your photo to that mask. And then from here it's a matter of moving the image around to get the best fit for your photo. So I'm going to bring that in a little bit in terms of size, maybe rotate it. Notice when I hover the cursor and pull it out from the corner of that bounding box, I get this double-ended arced arrow, and this allows me to rotate the image for a better orientation. I can also go to image adjustment levels, and I can increase the shadows to make it more contrasty, increase the highlights by making those lighter areas much brighter, and I can also change the midtones as well to produce a much more pleasing result for my image. I'm going to click OK, and then I can go ahead, if I wanted to, turn on some of these other layers. So say for example I wanted to see this portion of the frame much better, then I could go ahead and turn on those layers, and then I would duplicate that photo layer and then drag it up over the mask, and then go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and now you can see that we have a better view of that portion of the image. You're going to want to make some edits to the image at this point. You can see that the shadow is way too harsh. So if we go ahead and select that shadow and bring down the opacity in the layers panel, we're going to get a more realistic appearance. You could also go down and turn off some of these underlying layers as well that are not needed. So we don't need those frame layers and the shadow layers. And then also you're going to want to change the positioning of the UrbanThreadz. So if I select that layer in the layers panel, I'm going to make sure that I have the auto select option unchecked so I don't accidentally pick up and move any of those underlying layers. And then it's just a matter of moving and rotating that stitching just like we did with the photo earlier in order to find the best fit. And of course you can go on and you can do that with any of these other frame layers, and there's lots of different options here. You might decide to turn off the frame layer. It might be that you want to play around with different blending modes. You may just want to have those shadow layers that are visible. So if I go ahead and perhaps turn off some of these layers like such, you can see that we have a nice ghosted frame effect. So lots of different options there. I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on, slightly altered or deviated from my original layout, but I was able to show you the extent of being able to use these frames in different ways. We're now going to embellish the page and add some words in order to complete our artistry. But before I go ahead and do that, we want to make sure that we have the last layer of the layers panel selected so that when we introduce new layers, they will be positioned on top of all of these frame layers. It's much better than getting all of the different layers mixed up. So you want to have that layer selected, and then you're going to go to File, Open, and then you're going to navigate to your MultiMedia Branches number 10 folder. And I know I want to add a multimedia file from folder number 2. So I'm going to select that folder, and it's the same scenario as with the UrbanThreadz FotoBlendz Frames. You will get a PSD file which includes all of these PNG format files. I'm simply going to open that into my workspace. I am going to select all of those layers in the layers panel by holding down the shift button on my keyboard, and then I'm going to drag those layers directly on top of my photo. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit so that we can see the full extent of our layout, and then this is where you get to play around with changing the rotation. You may want to change the size of that element. I'm going to place it over here. Now that we have shifted the focal point, I'll have that there. And then once I have my elements placed, then I'm going to introduce some words. So to do that, we want to navigate to our WordArt, and I'm going to be using Travel WordArt Mix No. 1, which comes with this collection. And again, you will find a variety of different word art. So you'll have some plain black PNG files, which are also included in ABR format, so they can be used with the paintbrush tool in Adobe Photoshop. There is a beaded threads, there's a number of wood words and some transfers, and I like to use a variety of different word art to create visual interest and dimension in my pages, as well as be able to tell the story of my photo. So I'm going to select a word art, and I'm going to hold down the Control or the Command key if you're working on a Mac, and select a variety. So we've got a word transfer, a word art, and then I'm going to select a wood word. Notice how I am able to select those files independently when I use that Control or Command key instead of the Shift button. I'm going to drag these into my workspace so that they all open in the background, and then I'm going to make sure I have that last layer in the Layers panel selected, and I'm going to start placing them on my page. So I'm going to drag this onto my paper, and this is where you have the option to move the layers up and down the Layers panel. So it might be that I want to have this transfer so it peeks out from beneath the PhotoBlendz layer, in which case I want to drag that image beneath that PhotoBlendz so that it's positioned that way. And then we can add in the dream spot, and you can see now that that has been introduced directly above that word transfer, which means we can't see it. So that needs to be moved to the top of the Layers panel, and we can position that here perhaps, and then do the same thing with the wood word. I'm going to drag that in over like that. Maybe bring that in at the top here. So I'm having to move these around just a little bit to find the best fit. If you're interested in how I place my words and why I place them in certain positions, then you'll want to check out my Title Marks workshop, which is brand new in the Anna Aspnes Designs store at AnnaAspnesDesigns.com. I'll leave a link below this video, but it basically gives you an inside peek to my process and basically will help you select fonts and different types of word art and where to place them in your layouts. To complete this, I'm going to go ahead and add a drop shadow. So I'm going to go to Layer, Layer Style, and then Drop Shadow. And then I'm going to change the angle to 120, and then we'll push the distance up to 7 and the size up to 7. Maybe bring the opacity down closer to 40% and call that good. And there you go. We've been able to create a super fun digital artistry or artsy digital scrapbooking layout using a very few digital art supplies with an easy drag and drop approach, which can be created either in Adobe Photoshop or in your version of Photoshop Elements. If you have any questions about this tutorial, then please do not hesitate to contact me. I can be reached at AnnaAspnesDesigns.com, and I look forward to being back in this space again soon. Take care and have fun creating.